Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I just thought that since I'm speaking to a college, maybe I should talk about things that really appeal to you all. So, my story is really about how an average boy became an executive, a CXO, a C suite executive, because that's a story that perhaps appeals to all of you. So, let me just start by saying I was born a mistake. My mother wanted a daughter desperately because she already had two boys. And alas, I arrived, the third boy. You can imagine if you're the third boy in a large family, you're really part of the furniture. Everybody knows you're there, but nobody gives you any attention. You get bashed up by your brothers, but you're happy if they even include you in their football team or playing sports. My report cards were red in color. Red hot not because of how good I was, but because of the number of subjects I had failed in. All I ever thought of was to be a fighter pilot in the Air Force. And one day, when I was playing football in school, I collided with the goalkeeper and I fractured my leg. Big deal. People fracture their legs and go and play the World Cup. But that was not to be. A negligent doctor made a complete mess of my leg, and I got gangrene, and I spent the next 8 months on bed, numerous operations, and I really didn't know whether I would ever walk again. I was somebody in school because I ran, I played soccer, I boxed, and all those things. But today, I was a nobody. To go from somebody to nobody when you're 17, 18 is tough. My whole identity depended on sports. But today, I was nothing. I had to reinvent myself completely. It was at that time that was perhaps the darkest period of my life. Very often, and very much the phase that you guys are going through here in college. And I struggled to figure out what I would do next. But then I realized that with 1 billion Indians and millions of engineers like you, what would a guy like me do? And then I thought maybe if I got an MBA program entry, I might just be at least called for a job. But an MBA? I mean, how would I ever get in? Because they ask you for a vocabulary, they have group discussions, they ask you about current affairs, and none of this appealed to me. The only thing I looked at was perhaps the sports scores in a newspaper. But I realized I had no choice. I had heard about a library in college. I didn't know where it was. But now I was left with no choice but to get into the library. I went excited and I opened the newspaper. And instead of looking at the sports page, this time I said, let me look at the editorial page. And as I opened it, I saw some words that I recognized, some parts of the sentence, but I really couldn't get the entire message. And the words were a bit of a blur. Slowly, I fell asleep, only to be rudely woken up in the evening with the librarian saying, it's time to go home because the library is getting closed. The next day, I came back. But this time, I had a dictionary with me and I had a small blue notebook. Every word that I didn't know, I would write down the meaning, make a few sentences, and when I went back home with my friends, I tried to use those words. 40 years later, my friends still make fun of me. They say, where's your blue book? I then said, let me try and get into a public speaking course because I had never ever spoken in public. When I went there, I was wondering what I'm doing there because every time I was asked to speak, the words would get stuck. My palms would be sweaty and my throat completely parched. And I was wondering, what should I say here? Everything that I had learned, I'd forget. And then I read a story about Demosthenes. I wonder if you all know he was thrown out of the Greek parliament because he was considered uncouth. He didn't know how to speak, and he wasn't just good enough. Demosthenes then went home and shaved off half his head, which you consider as fashion today. And he stayed home for the next 3 months. He would go to the seaside, find pebbles, and put them in his mouth, and then speak and shout at the seas to build his lung power. I wasn't anywhere near the seaside, so I picked a few marbles at home, and I put them in my mouth to practice my pronunciation. With time, I developed a bit of confidence, and then I began to speak. I was lucky enough to get into an MBA program. I cleared the group discussion, the vocab, everything with the years that I'd put in. Getting in was tough, getting out was tougher. What with all the engineers who could add and subtract faster than me? But then I realized that I too had my strengths. With all the work that I'd put in, I was much better in communication than them. I was much better in strategy than them. I was much better in terms of conceptual skills and the ability to lead, because I'd been used to doing that when I was playing sports. I chose to get into marketing and services, and then eventually found myself in a bank for all the wrong reasons. Not because I wanted to be a banker, because in 90s in India, banks were the ones that paid well, and they gave loans for homes and cars and gave credit cards. What else would a young person want? Gradually, I one day rose to become the CMO, or the Chief Marketing Officer in a bank. But then I realized that a lot of leaders looked at marketing as an expensive habit. It was all about expenses and spending. And I was wondering, what did I learn wrong about building a brand and investing in the growth and stuff like that? So I soon realized that if I remain in the spending department, I'm not going to have great impact. So I then learned to move to the revenue side of the business. I learned about products. I learned about services marketing. I learned about technology. I learned about transformation. I learned about being digital and data and everything else. I tried to take on newer projects, newer markets, and then suddenly one day I was lucky to be made the head of a retail bank, which was a proper CXO position. I worked in 5 countries over the last 3 decades, but life was not always very kind. One CEO hired me to build a strategic business. Another CEO fired me because he said, "This isn't strategic anymore." It's extremely difficult to come to terms with being a hero one day and zero the next. It is at times like this that one has to dive deep within. And I've learned that only in times of adversity we learn, because that's the only time you look inward. So my breathing, my yoga, my meditation really helped me come to terms with the new reality. And I had to look into spirituality, which I ignored for all that time, to find meaning and purpose in life. But that's a signal that tells you that there is something more you need to learn in life. So if there is anything that I would like to share with you, it would be 3 secrets. Secret number 1. Secret number 1 is simple. Learn to believe that you can become a CXO and try and act and perform like one. Because all of us have limiting beliefs. And sometimes those limiting beliefs, like in my case, it was I'm not bright, I can't speak, I can't do all of that, right? It holds us back from our purpose, our goals, and what we want to achieve in life. And nature doesn't help either, because genetically, we all have a negativity bias. 80% of our thoughts are negative, and 90% are repetitive. But We need to be able to conquer our demons. Otherwise, we'll not be able to achieve our goal. These limiting beliefs are like a bit of resistance. You know what resistance is? You want to wake up at 5 in the morning, and guess what? When the alarm goes, you put the alarm down. This is what stops you from reaching your potential. To break through this resistance, you need to delve deep into your subconscious mind. And the best time is 30 minutes when you wake up in the morning and 30 minutes before you sleep. You need to be able to literally rewire your brain so that, and you do that with affirmations, with visualizations, with goal setting so that you can look ahead in life and not look behind. Learn to take action. Just try and be 1% better than you were yesterday. Don't dream about, becoming the world's best, because Rome wasn't built in a day. But if you become 1% better every single day, the power of compounding will ensure that you're 37% better than where you are, which translates to 3,778%. Leave the math. But are you better? You will be. Secret number 2. Don't be the best kept secret in the world. If you're the kind of person who sits and works in your room and you think that by working hard, that's good enough, it's not. Your boss might know what you're doing, but he's not everybody. As you get more senior in life, there is something called a promotions board, where there are people from other parts of the business who decide a lot about your fate. So if they don't know you, you're not going to get ahead in life. So build your brand. Be a thought leader. Speak at conferences. Publish your thoughts on LinkedIn. Build a website. Build a blog. Do whatever it is. But share your knowledge with the world. Why do you want to remain the best kept secret? The other thing that you can do is that in this process of building a brand, be consistent around, change your life. So it's all about your content, your thought leadership, and your presence. Secret number 3, signal that you're ready to become a CXO. What do you mean by signal, right? When you're on your way up, people don't know that you're good enough. So you have to give. It's like this. When you invest in a stock or you buy a mutual fund, why do you buy it? In the hope that one day it's going to appreciate. It's that hope and that potential that you have to show. But the way you show it is by building your executive presence. The board and CEOs promote you when they see that you're ready to take on higher responsibility. And make sure that you're able to signal that. So executive presence is nothing but the way you act, the way you behave, the way you conduct yourself, so that people see that you're ready to take on that higher responsibility. In this executive presence, it's a very nebulous word, but it's something that you really need to build. And take on strategic projects that nobody else wants to, because those strategic projects are what get the attention of a lot of senior management. And that signals that you're ready to take on the next level. So if you're not a CXO, remember, you don't have the experience to be a CXO, but you can definitely show the potential of becoming a CXO. So if I was to summarize, the 3 secrets are: 1, believe that you can be a CXO. Secret number 2, don't be the world's best kept secret. Secret number 3, signal that you're ready to take on higher responsibility. Build your executive presence. Above all, 80% is mindset, perhaps 20% is skills. But you have to take action 100% of the time. Without that, there's not much you can achieve. I'd just like to leave you with one thought. If an ordinary, average guy like me, who wasn't an engineer, can become a CXO and work around the world, why can't smart people like you do even better? Work on yourself, because that's the best project you can ever work on. Thank you.